Welcome back to the deep dive. Now, if you've been following the story of Pakistan, even casually, you've probably noticed something. The narrative you almost always hear, especially in the headlines, it's framed around struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Institutional friction, that constant push and pull, between the civilian government and the military. It's almost the default setting for how the story gets told.
Exactly. Division, competition for power. It dominates the conversation.
And look, while that's certainly part of the story, focusing only on that friction, well, you miss a lot. You miss the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
The moments of real, functional teamwork, collaboration. The sources we're digging into today argue that it's these periods, these times of civil-military cooperation that actually drove Pakistan's biggest steps forward, real measurable progress.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're consciously setting aside that conflict narrative for a bit.
Right.
And instead, we're looking for lessons in sources that really zero in on what they call civil-military synergy. We mean those specific times when the civilian side, the administration, the experts in the military, the command structure, the logistics didn't just, coexist.
No, they actively worked together, merged their strengths, pooled resources, authority, expertise, all aimed at achieving specific national goals.
And we're drawing quite a bit today from a particular perspective, the kind you find in books like, say, The Generals of Pakistan by Zahir Ahmad Mir.
Yeah, that viewpoint really pushes the idea that these periods of unity weren't just happy accidents.
They were, essential.
Kind of the precondition for Pakistan's major successes, according to this line of argument.
So let's nail down this term synergy right at the start. Based on these sources, the idea is pretty straightforward, but powerful. Great nations, particularly ones facing the kind of challenges Pakistan has faced, they can't really be built by one institution going it alone.
No, it takes teamwork.
The sources say they're built when civilians bringing the policy ideas, the technical know-how, the bureaucratic machinery work hand in glove with the military.
Which brings the discipline, the logistics, the execution power.
Right, protecting the nation, sure, but also building it, guiding it towards a shared goal, whether that's economic or strategic. It's about cooperation leading to concrete results.
And that really tees up the core argument, the foundational thesis of the material we're looking at. It shapes everything else.
Which is?
When civilians and the military clash, when they're pulling in different directions, Pakistan, well, it falters, it stumbles, sometimes quite badly.
Okay.
But, and this is the crucial bit, when they unite, when they actually achieve that synergy, Pakistan has shown this incredible ability to sort of punch above its weight, to make these rapid advances that are pretty remarkable for a developing nation.
So it flips the script. It's not this inevitable conflict, this zero-sum game where if one gains power, the other loses.
Exactly. The sources argue it's actually a necessary mechanism, a way to accelerate progress.
The formula they put forward is cooperation, not conflict.
And synergy, not division. Simple, but profound in its implications.
So if you buy into this premise, then you have to explain things differently. Every period of real national success must have had some form of unified action behind it.
Right. And conversely, every major crisis or period of stagnation probably links back to some kind of institutional conflict or breakdown in cooperation.
It's a strong claim.
And what they stress is that this isn't just wishful thinking. They argue that history itself, the actual results on the ground, prove this principle.
How so?
Well, they say, look at the evidence. The big infrastructure projects that got built, the major administrative reforms that stuck, the periods of significant economic growth. They argue these things correlate directly, time and again, with periods where there was deep institutional unity. It's more than just keeping the peace politically.
It's about actually mobilizing everything the nation has, resources, people, authority, under a single efficient plan.
Getting everyone rowing in the same direction, basically.
And technically, this is where it gets interesting. The argument seems to be that the military brings something unique to the table beyond just security.
Right, its inherent strength, things like, its logistics capabilities, moving stuff and people efficiently, its command structure, clear lines of authority, its focus on execution, on meeting deadlines.
Things that civilian projects often struggle with.
Precisely, especially large-scale disruptive projects. The idea is that this military efficiency is perfectly suited to implement those big civilian plans.
Provided,
and this is key, that the civilian expertise is fully locked in too. The engineers, the financial planners, the people who understand the policy nuances, you need both.
Why? What does that combination overcome?
It overcomes the usual roadblocks in developing countries, the bureaucratic inertia, the endless political squabbling, the corruption that can just paralyze big public works.
So you need the military's drive and the civilian sector's know-how working together.
Exactly. It's all about execution. Building a nation, especially the hard stuff like massive infrastructure or complex social changes, needs more than just a political green light.
It needs a system to actually do it.
Yes, a highly unified system for execution. The military, by its very nature, is built for execution.
So in this view, the military becomes like a high-speed transmission belt.
Yeah.
Taking the national vision from the civilian planners and actually making it happen efficiently.
That's a good way to put it. The thesis is basically that future progress depends on getting this synergy right.
Okay, so the military isn't just guarding the borders, it's kind of guarding the development process itself from falling apart internally.
Yeah, from delay, from inefficiency, from decay. It's a really interesting framework.
Definitely. This first big case study the sources point to for synergy in action. The Ayub Khan era, often called the golden decade in these texts.
Right. This is held up as almost the classic model. State-led development, very technocratic, driven by a unified vision. And the result, rapid, visible modernization. You could literally see the country changing.
So who are the key players in this synergy? Who was working together?
It was a very specific mix, focused on tangible results. You had engineers, the technical experts. You had senior bureaucrats, the administrative machinery. And you had the generals providing the command structure and drive.
And with all
Rapid, measurable development, building things, infrastructure, institutions. The idea was to take complex civilian plans, which, let's be honest, can get stuck in committees forever, and turn them into projects executed with, well, almost military precision.
So what was the military's specific role here, according to the sources? What do they add that the civilian side maybe lacked?
Execution speed and efficiency, the ability to cut through red tape. Think about building a huge dam or planning a whole new capital city like Islamabad.
Oh, yeah.
In a purely civilian system, you'd potentially face years, maybe decades, of land disputes, budget fights, arguments between provinces.
Right, the usual paralysis.
Exactly. But here you had what the sources call unity of command combined with expertise, meaning the civilian engineers and planners designed it, they knew what needed to be built and how. The military-led administration then provided the muscle and the central authority to just make it happen.
Like clearing obstacles.
Overnight, practically.
Right.
Securing huge tracts of land for Islamabad or for the big dams, bypassing the endless legal challenges in local politics that would normally stall everything. That required centralized power.
And the sources point to actual physical results
Yeah.
from this partnership, right? Things we can still see today.
Oh, absolutely. Massive nation-shaping projects, the big dams, Mangla, Tarbela, hugely important for power and for revolutionizing agriculture through irrigation.
Okay.
The creation of new universities, building up the intellectual capital the country needed,
Right.
and the rapid setup of industrial zones, getting industries like textiles and cement going, kickstarting the economy. And the key point the sources stress is that these things got built on time and at scale because the state was unified behind them.
The speed, again, that seems crucial to the argument.
It really is. A project like Tarbela Dam, in a different system, you might spend 10 years just arguing about feasibility studies and funding. Under this unified structure, resources were mobilized quickly, people were given clear targets, budgets were streamlined through that central authority. It was very focused, very technocratic, all about maximizing physical output.
Now, I have to ask, the source material must acknowledge that this kind of centralized unity of command obviously had political implications. It often meant sidelining democratic processes, right?
The text definitely focused more on the progress achieved, the developmental outcomes.
But they don't ignore the politics.
They tend to frame it implicitly.
Yeah.
The implication is that this level of centralized efficiency was seen as, well, necessary for national survival and rapid development given the circumstances back in the 1960s.
So the ends justified the means in this view.
From the perspective of achieving rapid development, yes. The core lesson drawn from the Ayub era, according to these sources, is unambiguous. Real progress demands that unity of command and expertise. The efficiency gain was seen as essential for building the literal foundations, the hardware, of the modern Pakistani state.
Okay, so Ayub's model. Technocrats plus army, goal is infrastructure. Very material, very top-down. That definitely sets up a contrast with what came later.
Exactly. Now we shift gears completely. We move to the era of General Zia-ul-Haq, and the whole concept of synergy changes dramatically.
How so?
We pivot away from Ayub's focus on concrete and steel, the physical infrastructure, the body of the state, if you like.
Right.
And the focus shifts sharply towards, well, values, social institutions, national identity. You could almost say it was about shaping the soul of the state.
That sounds like it would require a very different set of partners working together if Ayub needed engineers.
Zia needed theologians.
Well, yeah, kind of. The key synergy partners identified in this period are religious leaders, civil administrators, and again, the military.
A very different mix.
And it signals a totally different national project, doesn't it? Not just building dams, but trying to align state policy with what we're seeing as core societal values. National identity itself became the development project.
It absolutely changed the game. Under Ayub, you could say the military helped guarantee efficient construction. Under Zia, the sources suggest the military helped guarantee efficient social re-engineering by using its existing administrative reach and discipline to implement these value-based policies nationwide. The ideas, the ideological framework might come from religious scholars, but the logistical rollout, the administrative heavy lifting, often involved the military working alongside aligned parts of the civil service.
Okay, let's get specific. How did this actually play out in terms of policy? What needed this kind of coordination?
Well, the most obvious example is the push to implement various Islamic laws and ordinances. That wasn't simple. It required huge coordination between government ministries, the legal system, religious bodies, drafting the laws, educating people about them, setting up enforcement. It touched almost every part of the state.
That's a massive undertaking.
But maybe the clearest example of administrative synergy is the zakat system, the mandatory charity or wealth tax.
Right. How did synergy play into that?
Think about the mechanics. You need a massive, reliable system to make it work. Civilian finance departments had to figure out how to calculate and collect it accurately from big accounts across the entire country.
Okay.
But then comes the distribution, getting that money to the intended recipients efficiently and fairly. The sources suggest the military's administrative networks were really important here.
Why?
They provided a framework that was seen as impartial, structured. It could help ensure funds were collected properly and, crucially, distributed effectively, even in remote areas, perhaps bypassing some of the local political influence or inefficiencies that might have plagued purely civilian channels.
That's really interesting. So it wasn't just about the religious law itself, but the practical implementation, collection, and distribution relied on that combined civil-military administrative capacity for efficiency and perceived fairness.
Precisely. It's about making the policy actually function on a national scale.
Any other examples?
Well, the coordination of the Afghan jihad is another one, though obviously more geopolitical. That required aligning military strategy with foreign policy goals, but also mobilizing domestic support. This involved coordinating with government bodies, intelligence, but also tapping into support from religious groups and parts of civil society. It was synergy directed outwards for national security and foreign policy aims, leveraging internal alignment.
So pulling back, what's the big lesson the sources derive from the Zia era, this different kind of synergy?
It's that shared values or a shared ideology can be an incredibly powerful unifying force for institutions.
More powerful than politics sometimes.
Potentially. It can sometimes override the usual political factions and divisions. It acts like an institutional glue.
So Ayub's unity was more transactional. Let's build this dam together. Zia's unity, as the sources portray it, was more foundational. Let's align the state with our national identity.
Exactly. It aimed to weave the state structure more closely with the social and religious fabric of the country.
And the sources use this to show that synergy isn't just for building roads or factories.
Right. It can be, and was, used to try and reshape the cultural and legal landscape too. A very different kind of nation-building project, using a different kind of institutional partnership.
Okay, so fast forward now, moving into the 21st century. The model shifts again under General Pervez Musharraf. This time, it's all about the economy.
Yeah, specifically partnership with the economy, particularly the private and the burgeoning digital sectors. It was a very conscious alignment with global trends, economic liberalization, opening things up.
A different strategy again.
Completely. The big goal was rapid economic modernization, but critically, how they tried to achieve it changed. The state wasn't primarily the direct builder anymore, like under Ayub.
Or the social engineer like Zia.
Right, it became more of a facilitator. an enabler,
Yeah.
trying to create the conditions for private enterprise to flourish.
So who are the synergy partners this time? Who is the state working with?
This is where it gets really interesting. It wasn't mainly the technocrats or the religious scholars anymore.
It was businessmen.
Businessmen, IT entrepreneurs, leaders in the financial sector, the private sector more broadly, they were the new key partners.
And what did they need from the state, from this civil-military alignment?
Well, think about what holds back big private investment, especially in developing or unstable regions. Uncertainty, red tape,
Risk.
risk.
Exactly. So the sources highlight how the military-backed government provided two crucial things. One was massive deregulation, especially in sectors that had been state-controlled for decades.
Like telecom, banking.
Precisely. These were huge state monopolies or heavily regulated areas. To get private companies, including foreign investors, to pour in the billions needed to, say, build out mobile phone networks across the whole country.
They needed the rules-changed deregulation. But maybe even more importantly, they needed confidence, assurance that the new policies would actually stick, that things wouldn't just flip-flop with the next political change.
So the military's involvement provided a sense of stability and continuity.
That's the argument. It signaled that these reforms were serious and long-term. The sources point to really tangible results as evidence that this synergy worked.
Such as?
The absolute explosion of the telecom sector is the prime example. After privatization and deregulation, mobile phones went from a luxury item to being everywhere, almost overnight it felt like.
I remember that.
The narrative is that the unified leadership provided the political will to break up the old state monopoly, PTCL, and the security guarantees that attracted massive foreign investment.
And banking, too.
Similar story, modernization, expansion, new financial products, more competition. Again, this required strong state backing to push through reforms and maintain stability while the sector transformed.
So the institutional lesson here is quite different. It's about the economy.
Fundamentally, yes. When the state creates the right conditions, stability, predictable policy, less red tape, and partners effectively with the private sector, you can get these bursts of economic growth. Economic miracles, as the sources sometimes put it, especially in tech and services.
And the military's role was less about building things directly.
And more about building the environment, creating the secure, predictable, pro-business regulatory space where private companies felt confident enough to invest and innovate on a massive scale. Command and control applied to policy stability, you could say.
It makes sense, especially when you think about attracting foreign money.
Absolutely. It links directly to what was happening globally, that wave of state-supported liberalization you saw in places like Southeast Asia. The source perspective implies that to make this work fast in Pakistan, you needed that cohesive government strategy, one that ensured policies stayed favorable, infrastructure needs were addressed, regardless of political noise.
The military presence signaled reliability.
Reliability and continuity, yeah. That's the idea. It reassured investors who might otherwise be hesitant about the political risk. Institutional unity as an economic lubricant.
Okay, fascinating. Ayub infrastructure. Zia values. Musharraf economic liberalization via the private sector. Three very distinct projects, all framed as needing synergy to succeed.
Which leads us right up to the present day, and arguably the most deliberate, most formalized attempt yet to embed this idea of civil-military partnership into the state structure.
You're talking about the recent period under Field Marshal Asim Munir.
Exactly. And specifically, the creation of the SIFC, the Special Investment Facilitation Council.
Okay, SIFC. Why is this considered so significant in this context of synergy?
Because it represents a shift. It's an attempt to move synergy from being something that happens, based on the personalities or needs of a particular time.
Sort of ad hoc.
Yeah, exactly. From being ad hoc to being institutionalized, built into the system as a permanent feature, designed specifically to tackle economic challenges head-on with maximum efficiency.
Right, let's break down that structure a bit. What is the SIFC, practically speaking?
Well, essentially, it's a formal body, established legally, that brings the key players to the same table. You have top civilian representation ministers for crucial areas like finance, planning, IT, energy, plus key bureaucrats.
Okay.
And sitting right alongside them, you have the highest levels of the military leadership. The Chief of Army Staff is central.
So, military and civilians officially meeting together at the top level.
Yes. It's designed as a permanent apex forum, and its explicit job is to cut through the usual bureaucratic delays and political hurdles that have historically slowed down or completely derailed major investment projects in Pakistan.
So the frustration investors felt, having to go to dozens of different ministries, getting stuck. SIFC is meant to fix that.
That's the core idea. It's positioned as a one-window solution.
Yeah.
Meaning big investors, especially foreign ones, can come to the SIFC, get decisions made quickly by all the relevant authorities at once, civilian and military, and crucially, have confidence that those decisions will be implemented because the full weight of the state, including the military's execution capacity, is behind it, regardless of who is in the elected government at any given moment.
That's a powerful promise. What is it focusing on?
The focus is laser sharp. Strategic economic revival, getting big projects moving, securing investment, particularly in areas vital for national self-sufficiency and exports.
Which areas specifically?
The SIFC has prioritized four main sectors. First, agriculture, trying to boost yields, move towards more corporate farming models, improve food security, and increase exports.
Okay.
Second, mining. Pakistan has huge untapped mineral wealth like the Reko Diq copper and gold deposits. Extracting that requires massive long-term investment and guaranteed stability.
Makes sense. What else?
Third is energy, absolutely critical for industry and daily life. SIFC aims to streamline energy projects, both production and ensuring the grid is stable. And fourth, IT. Building on that earlier push under Musharraf, but aiming for a major expansion in software, exports, tech services, the whole digital economy.
Now, the source material also talks about how this is perceived outside Pakistan. What's the claim there?
It makes a really strong claim that major international partners, particularly from the Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and potentially other global investors, they see this SIFC structure, this visible unity, as Pakistan's greatest asset right now.
Really? More than anything else?
That's the argument. They're investing or considering investing, not necessarily because they love the specific policies of the day, but because they trust the continuity and the implementation power that the military's direct involvement in SIFC guarantees.
So the structure itself becomes the selling point, the perceived stability it offers.
Exactly. Investors crave predictability. Seeing the military leadership directly embedded in economic decision-making and project execution alongside civilian ministries drastically reduces their perception of political risk.
So the lesson from this most recent phase?
It's perhaps the starkest one yet. In the 21st century, with global volatility and fierce economic competition, synergy isn't just a nice-to-have for progress.
It's what? Survival.
It's basically survival. It's about maintaining economic stability, attracting the foreign capital needed to function, and ensuring the state can act decisively. The military's role here has evolved again. Now it's also the ultimate guarantor of economic policy consistency and implementation, making the state a reliable partner for business.
Wow. So synergy goes from being a tool for development to almost a prerequisite for stability, a major evolution.
So if we just take a step back for a moment, we can see this clear pattern emerging, just as the sources lay it out, four really distinct models of synergy.
Yeah, each one shaped by the specific challenges and opportunities of its time.
Let's quickly recap them. You had Ayub Khan.
Right. Technocrats plus the army, the goal, infrastructure, dams, roads, the basic hardware for a modern state. The need was material.
Then came Zia-ul-Haq.
A totally different partnership. Religious institutions plus the army. The focus shifted to values, social cohesion, the software of the nation, you could say. The need was ideological.
Then Musharraf.
That was the private sector plus the army, driving economic liberalization, deregulation, pushing into the digital age. The need was adapting to the global economy.
And finally, the current model under Asim Munir,
which institutionalizes it with the SIFC, key ministries plus the army. The focus is squarely on attracting investment, reviving core economic sectors. The need now is efficiency and economic survival in a tough global climate.
It's quite a progression when you lay it out like that.
What's really striking, though, and the sources hammer this point home, is that even though the partners changed dramatically, engineers, religious leaders, businessmen, ministers, and the immediate goals were completely different, building dams versus Islamic finance versus attracting tech investment.
The underlying mission, the core idea, stayed the same.
Apparently so. Building Pakistan, achieving national progress together through some form of unified civil-military action, that remained the constant thread, according to this perspective.
And so the final verdict, the main takeaway from this whole analysis.
It comes back to that core principle we started with.
When they unite, Pakistan soars. When they're divided, it stumbles.
Exactly. The sources present this not just as an opinion, but as the observable historical pattern. The moments of greatest national achievement are directly linked to the moments of deepest institutional cooperation. High efficiency requires high alignment.
It certainly provides a clear, if challenging, blueprint for the future, doesn't it?
It does. If this analysis is correct, then the level of genuine synergy between institutions becomes a direct predictor of national success. Hashtag outro. And that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. We've explored this really powerful, though maybe less commonly discussed narrative about Pakistan's development, the story of civil-military synergy.
Yeah, the idea that cooperation, not conflict, is the actual proven formula for getting significant things done. Whether it was Ayub's infrastructure, Zia's social alignment, Musharraf's economic opening, or today's SIFC focusing on investment.
The sources consistently argue that this synergy, this blending of civilian expertise and policy with military discipline and execution power, is the essential ingredient, the key to building what they often aspirationally call the Pakistan of our dreams.
The core message is that unity unlocks potential, division wastes it. The historical examples are presented as proof of this power, tangible successes linked directly to moments when key institutions pulled together.
Now, as we wrap up, these sources, they often have this grand vision attached, right? This idea of a unified Pakistan rising to global prominence, maybe even becoming, as some texts ambitiously put it, the next world superpower.
It's a bold vision.
It is.
Yeah.
But if we take the core lesson seriously that synergy is survival and sustained cooperation is the key, it raises a final question. A provocative thought, perhaps, for you, our listeners, to consider, building on that grand claim. We've talked a lot about the synergy between the military and various parts of the civilian government ministries, technocrats, the private sector. But what other crucial parts of the national fabric? What other institutions might be missing from this formula?
Interesting question. If the goal is truly profound, long-term national unity and achieving that superpower vision.
Right. Who else needs to be brought into this synergistic relationship? Think beyond just the executive branch and the army. What about the judiciary? What about the media? What about, say, the political opposition, academia? Are they essential ingredients currently outside this framework?
Where does the next critical alliance need to be formed to make this synergy truly comprehensive and sustainable for that long-term vision? Does the framework need to expand?
Something to think about.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you a useful perspective, a shortcut maybe, to understanding this compelling narrative of national development through unity.